Welcome to the Go Time Podcast. Go Time Podcast with your host, Todd Martin.
Welcome back to the Go Time Podcast.
Lord.
So today's guest is Nathan Camacho. So I just know you from Jiu Jitsu, and Rodrigo gives everybody different names.
Yeah.
And so it's Nate, Nick, Camacho.
Yeah. We'll leave some of the other names out.
So what do you most commonly go by outside of Jiu Jitsu?
So always introduce myself as Nathan, and it becomes Nate very quickly. So it's all good.
Yeah. So Nate, so you are a golf pro
And golf instructor.
golf instructor
For close to 25 years now.
Really? 25 years.
Yeah.
I love that. And so tell me when did you start in? So you played as a youth?
Didn't really start golf till I was around 16. I'd been around the game, obviously, before that through my dad and all that. But we went to a high school that had a high school golf team. I was a baseball player, really. I loved baseball. And then we went there and, I just fell in love with golf. And from that day on, I was holding a golf club every day, all day.
Your dad?
At night.
So your dad played golf too?
Yeah, growing up, my dad was in the military, so we would be by military golf courses, and my dad would definitely play. I think he got down to like a 1 handicap at one point, and I would tag along and I would hit balls and do all that as a younger player. But it was really when I was 16 was when I said, I'm going to be a golfer.
Really?
And quit playing baseball and quit playing everything else, actually.
Really?
And just, and then within about a year, I was about a 1 handicap. So from the time I was 16 to 17, I got pretty good.
Wow. In 1 year?
Yeah. When I tell you I had a golf club in my hand, it was constant. You could find me outside in the backyard swinging a golf club 1 o'clock in the morning. You still find me doing that. And it's more in my living room now. But I still do things like that.
Really?
Still get up early. Still, yeah. Something about hitting a golf ball has always, when you hit it right, it just feels so good.
It is. There is something about like searching for that perfect thing, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say whether it's passing a guard, like something you pass a guard and it's just so good, or hitting a golf ball or making the putt, and the way the ball pops in a glove, you want to try and repeat that over and over again. And it takes some time sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's why so many guys in jiu-jitsu find such a passion in it.
Yeah.
Is because there's such a never-ending learning to it. Even no matter, you've been doing it for several years, but it's just, there's so much more. And when you got somebody who's an instructor like Rodrigo, and you got somebody like Rod has 30 years advanced on you, it's just crazy trying to chase it. But you see that he's still learning new parts, but he's so good at teaching it.
Yeah, it's been, so I've been with Rodrigo since 2013. So coming up on close to 10 years now. And it's been a fantastic journey through that school. So I've enjoyed every year of it.
Have you drawn a lot of parallels with that in golf?
Like if you look at the way, me personally, the way he runs the class, he really does kind of treat people for what they need.
If he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, if they're coming up competing and they need, like a more physical role, he can give that to them. If they need more of like hey, you need to do this more, he can give that to them. He encourages people all the time, but he can also be like more on them to work harder or whatever. I think he does a really good job of doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So after high school, did you, where'd you go with the golf deal?
So I had no plans on doing anything with college. If any of my students hear this, my juniors will but I really didn't. College wasn't really in the plans. I had one coach call me after high school. I was planning just playing the summer of golf and then probably join the military.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then that's kind of what everybody in my family before me had done. And one coach called me. I went and played in front of him 2 weeks before school started. He said, I can give you this much. And 2 weeks later, I was in school. I mean, it wasn't a lot of fanfare. It wasn't, nobody was like knocking down my door. It was a small school. And, but my mentality was, as long as I'm playing, as long as I'm competitive, as long as I can keep getting better, I can keep getting better. And that was really the moral of my story. And I just kept practicing.
What branch was what branch military was your dad in?
Air Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So some pretty decent golf courses.
Yeah, that's kind of a joke in the military, right? But the Air Force definitely tends to have really good facilities. And so we were privileged to be on some decent courses, and definitely, I lived in England, Germany, saw most of Europe, been all over the place, and
Oh, that's kind of cool.
yeah, it was fun. Like, one of the things I love is history. Love reading about it, love seeing it. But I think one of the reasons I like it so much is because I've seen so many of those places, and
It gives you a different perspective on the world, doesn't it?
oh, absolutely,
Getting to travel.
absolutely.
And that was an eye opener for me. Like, just a kid growing up in a little small town of Marion down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I think our town was like 800 people, 850. And I remember my first trip to Europe, and I was starched jeans and cowboy hat, and I landed in Heathrow Airport. Oh my God. I remember sending a message back to my dad going, you're not going to believe this, but there's so many men here wearing skirts and dresses, and they're all staring at me like I'm the odd. It's just wrong.
Yeah, that's funny.
So it was wild. My first trip going outside of the country, it was just, well, I mean, we went to Mexico, but that's not.
No, I love it when I see like, some of the guys from the school who maybe never left San Antonio or something like that. They go to Abu Dhabi, or they go.
Oh, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, they're traveling to Portugal and all this stuff. Japan, like Lily went to Japan a couple times to compete over there once or twice. But just get to go experience a different part of the world.
Just
something you love.
Mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's got to be fun too. Getting to kind of see the young kids when you're training with you're teaching the young kids, they're just sheltered on the idea of the world. The world is just something that they see on their phone.
Yeah. Well, I think about it. Like, they're growing up, they're adolescents or teenagers, and they basically know home, school, and maybe the gym.
The world's so small.
In my case, home, school, and the golf course.
Yeah.
And then to see them traveling places and competing and winning or not winning, whatever.
Yeah.
And still having that experience of, seeing the world and putting themselves there out on the battlefield or the line or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, coming home better for it.
Yeah, it makes them so much better. That's one thing I just did an interview with a young lady named Christiana earlier this last week, and she used to groom horses for me here, and she was like kind of the same thing. Her parents were missionaries, and so all she knew was just the little small village that they were missionaries in, and then homeschooled. And so her view of the world was like just crazy different, right?
Very different.
And so she was just restricted on a lot of exposure, and had no idea that she was even athletic at all. Like, she never even played.
Never been exposed to it.
Never.
Oh, wow.
Right. And she got invited to come over and do a obstacle course race, like a Spartan race, and she
Crushed it.
Yeah, she's like, she was trotting around on it, and then she realized she could run, and then she goes and crushes one, right? Yeah. And now she's like she's hits the podium every time at one of these big. She went to California. She came here to San Antonio, won San Antonio last weekend, and she's running all over the world now, and all over the States at least, and just killing it, right? And doing 50-mile and 100-mile races, and she just had no idea. She just, like, all of a sudden, like, I had, and she's got a fresh body. She hasn't abused it at all. It's just ready to go.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I often think sometimes, like, there's got to be somebody that's every bit as talented as a Tiger Woods or whoever, but whoever's top in whatever field, they've never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So they never get to know that what their potential was or what was laying within their body, their mind.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many are just you never find?
Right.
Yeah.
Just from lack of exposure.
Just from lack of exposure, right? I think that one of the greatest things that my dad did for me whenever I was young was he let me do everything. Yeah. Right? He let me try all kinds of stuff and find out what I didn't want to do. Right? Even whenever I started my first, job experiences, I was like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I've had every job under the sun. I mean, like every job under the sun, right? I was even a weatherman in the Air Force.
Oh, really? Oh, so you were in the Air Force as well then. So you know about the fishy.
Oh, I walked out of high school and worked at the Walmart distribution center for, I don't know, 6 months until I got, I was signed up, and then I went off into the Air Force and was a weatherman in the Air Force. I was going to see the world, and I got stationed in basic training in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went and did tech school in Rantoul, Illinois. And then I got stationed in Lubbock, Texas, and then I came back home.
Big world.
Yeah, exactly. And of all things, I found, so it was kind of a crazy thing. I took my first riding lesson when I was 21.
Oh, okay. So you were late to that.
No, we had some horses in the backyard, but we didn't really. I had no idea what I could do with them. I just kind of got bored with them in the backyard. I had no idea that there was something I could do, right? And so it was kind of like that. I went through everything under the sun until all of a sudden I went and did something. And it was like what you said about, then all of a sudden you had a club in your hand all the time.
All the time.
At that point, I rode a horse, and I didn't own a horse. I couldn't afford one, right? But I washed tails and manes on a guy's horses, and I did everything outside of work to be on a horse. Yeah. And I did that for like 8 years.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the golf can be very cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for my dad's military experience where we got a membership to the military base for something ridiculously cheap, who knows? Like maybe I never take that. But I know once I said, okay, golf's my thing, I was out at the golf course, weekends, mornings. Mom would drop me off, pick me up at sunrise, pick me up at after dark. I mean, all I thought about was golf. Much like you've had Rodrigo on here. Like I'm sure Rodrigo's always thinking about Jiu Jitsu.
That was his thing. He's like, it was funny because when he said was like, that's my ticket. It was my ticket. It was my way out. But it was also just like all of a sudden that's all he was going to do.
Yeah.
When was your first experience like understanding the mental part of golf? Because that's such a huge part of golf, right?
Yesterday. No. Yeah, no, it's well, I think it's a huge part of anything, whether it's jiu-jitsu, you can roll great in the gym, then you step on the mats and something changes.
Oh man.
And sometimes it's in a good way, sometimes it's
Is that not an eye opener for most of the guys you watch? And it's so many of them in all the white belts when they come in, like the whites and the blues, they're coming in and it's just you see them just come out of there and they're going in and you're watching them go. The ones that are funny to me is when you see them watching them go in and it's like they've won it already and they're just so psyched and whatever else. And then all of a sudden it's the deer in the headlights you look whenever somebody just like jerked your collar and snapped your neck. And then you were like, oh my God, this crap got real quick.
Real quick. Things happen faster.
Yeah.
Things just, maybe it's, maybe it's just internally they happen faster, but grips seem tighter.
Oh,
movement seem quicker.
Everything. And then you just see the adrenaline dump on them. And then it's just, you watch and just take the life out of them.
Yeah. So, when it goes, if we bring it back to golf, it's, I'll tell you when I had my first realization about the mental game. I wasn't smart enough to actually do anything about it afterwards, but I realized, something was different today. I had played poorly in a tournament, the previous tournament. And I remember being a bit beat up about it. And I was on the driving range and I'm like, well, I'm at this other tournament. Who knows what's going to happen? And because prior to that, I would always put a lot of expectation like, I want to be the best. I want to win this tournament. I want to like not only win it, but I want to win it by 12 shots.
Yeah.
And I was putting like self-pressure, or my own pressure.
Right.
To have a certain performance. And the first time I was probably 17. And I just remember sitting on the driving range just being like, I'm just going to swing smoothly today and just, try and hit the greens, try and make the putt. And if it doesn't make the putt, I'm going to make a par and just go to the next hole. And I did that all day and I shot 6 under. It was the lowest score I'd ever shot in a tournament. And it was so low stress. There wasn't a lot of fanfare about it. It was just, I hit the fairway, hit the green. And if I 2-putted, I was happy. If I made the putt, hey, I was happy too.
Well,
and
it's a crazy feeling, isn't it?
It really was. But I didn't learn the lesson because the next tournament I went back to trying to think about never. Well, if I do that, not trying, wait and watch me try, right? And then it was back to a higher score, and it took me quite a few years to understand that.
That was almost like a kiss of death for me if I was like, watch this.
Yeah.
I'm going to screw it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, over the years, the ball's in contact for something like 4 milliseconds, which is a ridiculously small amount of time. And people want to control that ball in golf, right? I mean, that's the point of the game, is to control the ball and shoot the lowest score. But what I find is most people try and control the wrong things. They try to control the outcome as opposed to controlling what they can control, which they can control their attitude. They can control their grip. They can control their alignment. They can control how much they practice prior to the tournament, which is a big one, discipline. And you start getting those things under control, and sure enough, the ball doesn't always listen, doesn't always go where you want it to go, but then you have to have the discipline to like forget about it and go control the things that you can control, which is your attitude, your grip, your alignment, your posture, your.
When I did the one with Bill Rogers, that was really an eye opener for me, because what we do in my competition with the horses, I got like a 5-minute kind of pattern that I run, right? And it's dictated by they tell us what we're going to run, and we've got to perform it to the highest level and whatever. But you have 5 minutes that you're in the pen, and the 5 minutes are you're by yourself, right? So you got to hold your crap together for 5 minutes, which seems like an eternity
Sometimes.
Right? Yeah. And you have no backup. You have nobody else to rely on. And you're trying to, have the horse do it with you together and whatever else. So reset was never something that I ever had to practice. I had a month between that competition and the next, right? It wouldn't even even in Jiu Jitsu tournament, I would, you have a roll, and then, a few minutes later, you got another roll. So you got to get your head back in and whatever, right? Well, I didn't have to do that. For the big competitions, you run, you practice, you've been getting out of the pen, you do all these stuff, and then it culminates the one run. And then I've got, a week at the least and month or a couple of months before I'm going to go back in again. So my reset would be, I would go home, you could chill out, you could do whatever and refine yourself, work back at stuff. And that was your reset. And in his explanation was the reset was between every stroke.
Every stroke.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, every stroke. There's no carrying forward the last stroke, good or bad. You got to reset. And so if it's a good shot, enjoy it. Forget about it. If it's a bad shot, accept it. Forget about it. And then you got to reset and do the same thing over again. So, like when you come to the 6 a.m. that I get the privilege of running or teaching, we do a lot of the same things over and over. That's a lot from my golf experience.
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't gone to the 6 a.m. in several months.
Thanks.
And then, but I went the other day, and the white belts are rolling a whole lot better.
Did you notice?
Yes, I did. There's a couple of guys in there that I noticed they were I think they were floundering on on getting the fundamentals, and they weren't getting drilled. And man, I could tell the difference in a couple of guys. Like I didn't get to roll with a bunch of them, but I did get to roll with a couple of them, and they actually had an idea where they were going, and I could see the difference. It was definitely cool.
That's awesome. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, there was one in particular that I've rolled with him quite a bit before, and I try to help him and stuff, but there's just a disconnect if you're not practicing it, you're not drilling it, right? And I almost felt like he was going to be a little discouraged, like he was starting to get a little discouraged because he just wasn't getting anywhere, right? And he just was, he just didn't know how to get to the next spot, right? And he felt like it was funny. He's like, okay, so I know you could have killed me in any of that spot. And I'm like, well, I mean, that wasn't the point, but like, where you're getting to an idea where you're going with the things now. And it's like, there's a market improvement on what you're doing.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you saw that. Sometimes when you're there all the time, you don't always see it, but the fact that you had been gone a little bit and then came back and you saw it, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Good.
That was good. Yeah. And that's where I've noticed, like, I'm curious about your, so I've had several guys on the podcast that, and I've been lucky to get to know some people that have like done some really cool stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that is the most underrated, unsung hero part of any competition, right? Because it's even with the reining horses. We've got the guys that, some of the guys that are like top of the game, right? And they're winning everything, and they're, but in order to be at that level, there's a level of selfishness that comes along with it that you can't share your time with other people, because you're not going to stay there on the top if you're spending your time pouring into other people. There's only one guy I really know of in our industry that can actually stay at the top and give it back. And I've noticed that with Rodrigo has a little bit of that ability too, earlier on when he was still competing a lot, that he would, but it was like, it sucked everything. Like he was just completely enthralled with it. And the coaching aspect of things is so vital. Like it's such a huge part of any sport. And it's a bit of the unsung part of it. Right? I mean, you're not going to do it for the accolades, because you're just not going to get as many of them.
Yeah, you don't. No. You will get blamed if you take like a good student or a good golfer or a good jiu-jitsu person and they perform poorly. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know about that. But
maybe he needs to go a different route and somebody else needs to.
But that person plays well. He's always had the talent. And a lot of times they do have the talent, right? And you just have to try and bring it out. It's always, they do get the credit. They're the ones playing, and that's the way that's the way it should be.
I think one of the things about coaching is that for people to come in from coaching or come in and get to use another coach, right? And they go to change, that they have to understand whenever they're coming in that they're buying into a program, right? I think that's one of the harder things. So with what I do, I got a coach too, right? Mm-hmm. And when people come in, if I got people that come in from their kids can sit a horse good, right? They've been on horses a lot and whatever else, but they haven't understood the fundamentals like it. And it's almost like I've got to take them and go, look, you're going to have to you're going to go downhill before we go back up. Mm-hmm. If I had a pitcher that was pitching, an 85 mile an hour, 90 mile an hour fastball, like 80, 85, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's high enough. It's fast enough. You got talent.
You're going to college.
You're going to go to college, right? But you could be a big fish in a little pond in college, or you can go to the right school with the right coach, and your first year or two, you might just give it up. You're not going to be the head guy. You could be, but you're not. I've got to change your throw. I've got to change it. And if I don't change it, your mechanics have got to change, and it's going to take you a bit. But if you do, you got a shot to go in the pros. Right. If you don't, you'll do fine in college, but you got no shot. Yeah. And I can use you up as a coach for my college deal or whatever else, and I give a crap whether you go to the pros or not. Mm-hmm. But I will excel in my program.
Sure.
But you're not.
Right.
And if I've got a coach that really desires to pour into you, right, that I'm going to take and I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to take and I'm going to redo your deal and redo your fundamentals, because it may crush you a little bit for this. I'm like, we just need to go through this, but I can make you excel in it. And the true investment is not just that, you've got to hit the pros and you've got to, make the tour in order for us to have success. But if you understand how deep and how fundamental the fundamentals are, you'll take it into business. You'll do it into everything, your school, your life. I mean, every bit of it, right? You're pouring into that life of that kid.
Well, I think one of the key words you used there was the word understand, right? Like, to have a profound understanding of fundamentals is actually rare. Everybody thinks fundamentals are easy, but the reality is that those two words are not like synonymous, right? They don't mean the same thing. Fundamentals and easy do not mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the guys on the PGA Tour, most of them, when their game starts going off, what do they revert back to? Address position, grip, ball placement, alignment, which is the 101 of golf. And the best players are always the best at the fundamentals. The guys in Jiu Jitsu, like Rodrigo's Jiu Jitsu, in my opinion, not that I've rolled with everybody, but his fundamentals are so solid that things that you think don't work when you're a white belt, you learn it. It only works on white belts.
But choke you.
Yeah. How do I choke you? But, wait, you don't want to have good base? So you can want to be falling over, but you don't know how to choke somebody. So. But, how many times have you been in the advanced class? And, Rodrigo says, look, this is the advanced class. If you don't know this, you need to go to fundamentals.
Yeah.
And the class I teach, it's listed as an all levels class, but we go really slow. And I really do try to point out some of the details of what makes the move actually work versus just going through the motions and not applying the proper, directives that you need on the move. So, but yeah, it's fundamentals to me are, you don't go very far without them.
No.
And the further you go, the better your understanding of fundamentals get. And you just you start working on those instead of, but those fundamentals allow you to do the more advanced things even better and better and better.
Yeah. I've gotten lucky to, I get on the road and I go and show and stuff, and I'll go to Katy or I'll go to Oklahoma City, and then I'll get to drop in at a couple different places and try a couple different jiu-jitsu places out, and it's always fun because it's kind of like the same thing with the horses. There's a camaraderie and there's not knowing in between it, and so there's like a commonality that you can go in there and everybody's cool. And there's a couple places that maybe not all as cool, but everybody's pretty cool wherever you go. And the thing that I get, the comment I get every single time, every place that I go, every single time, it's crazy, is, dude, your fundamentals are so solid. It's what I get every single time, and even if I'm rolling with different belts at different places, none of them, I'm not going to go in and dominate everywhere or whatever else.
Sure.
But it's pretty hard to get someone by me. I'm going to be able to survive.
Yeah. So I love traveling and I love taking a gi and I love trying to find places to go. And, coming from a slightly different background, I didn't do jiu-jitsu first, but coming from that background, when I went to jiu-jitsu, I always wanted my belt, whatever it was, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, whatever. I always wanted to go into places and think, at the end of the day, when I left, they'd be like, hey, that visiting purple belt, he was solid.
Yeah.
He's a solid, good purple belt.
Yeah. Nobody gave him that promotion. He at least is, he legit is a whatever.
And what I've learned is, the better your fundamentals get, it just goes up the belt rank with you, right? And it just, so my fundamentals as a brown belt are much, hopefully, better than they were at blue belt. Because if they're not, then I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah.
So same thing with golf.
So when you're coaching your kids in golf, that's a primary. So are most of your clients the youth? Do you have a lot of juniors, or do you have?
I literally teach everybody.
Yeah,
I teach retired CEOs of companies. I teach junior golfers. Actually, for the longest time, I didn't teach junior golfers very much. I did teach them, but I didn't. They weren't I wasn't trying to build my business on that, and I still don't. I teach, but I started to realize if instead of always correcting someone's swing flaws or, like you might get from a 60-year-old CEO
Mm-hmm.
who's been playing for 30 years with an over-the-top slice.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to build like future golfers,
Yeah.
you need a clean slate.
Yeah.
So that's when I started changing to like trying to, I wouldn't say change the emphasis of my teaching, but to bring in more juniors. And it was just because, and I didn't look for always the most talented or the most athletic. What I wanted was kids that wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And that had a passion for learning.
And that's a hard one.
It's
right?
super
and
hard.
It's not the parents that want the kid to learn, or the parents that want them to be the golfer.
Yeah. And I've definitely lost kids in my program because the parents didn't see where the program was going. But it takes time to build.
It does.
And I wasn't going to change what I believed just so I could make the parent happy.
Mm-mm.
There is always a portion of that they're the customers and you got to, keep them happy. But if they can't see what I'm trying to build and what I'm trying to do for them long term,
Yeah. It's not going to work.
if little Susie's not winning the tournament at age 10,
Yeah.
but she's killing it at age 16, like
it's so hard to see that far in the future too on some of them. I think the ones that are the easiest to coach, if there is, but the easier ones to coach are the executive or the retired executive, mostly because I always say that I love to have that kind of client,
Mhm.
because no one is successful in business and has, gone out and killed it and come into the recreation and want to suck.
right,
Right. And so it's easy to apply the same principles in business as it is in sports, right? It's the analogies are very fundamental. It's like I had a client one time that, it was early on in my career, and I asked him, it was like, we were talking about his business and stuff. And he said, people ask me all the time, we want to come in and want time of mine to be able to ask me how it is that I, accomplished or got to where I did in the industry. And he said, this is the same answer every single time. I just make sure that in the morning I start off with 1 and I end up with 8. At the end of it, but I always start at 1. And 1 is, I get up, I check my emails or whatever it is, the fundamentals of his business. You got to respond to people, or you got to do this. But it was always, and sometimes he goes, sometimes I get off track and I start at 3. And he said, whenever it starts to go wrong, I go back and I go, okay, well, I got to start at 1 today. So
Absolutely.
Monday I get up, I start at 1 and I don't let go of the fundamentals, the primary of my business. Is the reason why I've always really admired, we talk about Rod all the time. He's going to get a big head.
I know.
Yeah, he already has one. But one thing that I've noticed about him, and you know what? You look at his business, not just his jiu-jitsu, right? But his business is fundamentally super, super sound. Why? Because you see him going to a tournament. He's out of town. He's been, traveling or whatever else. And he'll roll back in at 4:00 in the afternoon and he does not miss the kids' class. I mean,
Right. He goes right back to the
he
gym.
goes right back to what feeds his business, and it's those kids. And he doesn't go in there and half rear end it. He doesn't go and neglect it. He never does neglect that. If anything, he might even neglect some of the guys, some of the bigger guys that are doing stuff. Right?
Mhm.
He does not neglect those kids.
Right.
And that's the fundamental of his business. It's the foundation of his business. And I noticed that right off the bat about him, that, not only was he like really good, but like he's going to be here for a long time.
Right.
Right. I didn't have to worry about, is he,
the business going to be here next year?
Yeah. Am I going to have to change places? Schools or whatever else, because he's not going to stick around. Like, he's so solid, and it speaks to his business too. Like it flourishes even in, the midst of the craziness of the pandemic and whatever else. Like, that dude was solid.
Yeah. Well, every CEO I've ever taught, when we get talking about the business, first of all, they know their business in and out.
Right.
Regardless, they all know whatever their business was. They know how it works. They know the underpinnings of it, right? And then if things start to go a little sour, they know exactly where to go to. And it always has to do with going back to the fundamentals of doing the business right.
Right.
And there are many people in golf that do not know the fundamentals. They do not know the underpinnings of what it takes to play good golf. therefore, when it starts turning sour, they're like, it's like Tin Cup where he's putting his wallet in his other pocket and things, just hoping.
Yeah.
He's just throwing stuff at a wall, right?
Yeah.
Hoping something sticks. And if I'm being honest, I've been there too, right? But the desire to want to get better and be more consistent, because that's what it's really about. It's consistency, right? Like what you're talking about with Rod is it's consistent. The gym's going to be there. The teaching's going to be there. There's something. I think everybody finds comfort in consistency because you know what to expect.
Yeah.
And it's when things kind of go haywire that, the person with the better fundamentals or understanding of what's going on
can crawl out of that hole
better.
Yeah. I think that's why it's always fun to deal with, to have the executive, the past executive come in and work with, because it's not foreign to them to go back to that, right? Even if they don't even know why they did it or have a full understanding of it. If I can relate it to when I'm teaching the one who's coming in at a later part in life to start the different, hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching is teaching, right? So when I'm teaching the horse, or when I'm teaching a kid, or you're teaching a kid how to count, right? You have to start with a known. And so it's really hard for me to train a horse if I don't understand his communication, right? And then same thing with the kid, you're going to teach them how to count to 10, right? Well, you have to start with something as what the number 10 or what the number 5 represents, right? Well, so we start with an apple. Why? Because they know food, right? And so they at least have something. It's a known commodity, right? So whenever you're dealing with that executive, they are going to go back. If I can understand just a small part of, the business of whatever it is that they're doing. And it's like, hey, so we got to go back to its employees, or it's, it's this, that then it makes sense to them, right? Because I'm working with something that is known to them, right? Because business is important, and it's something that's been the livelihood of them for 20 something years or whatever, right? But I think it's a little bit different with the kids, because you got to like the known on them to find it. There's a lot. It is a clean slate. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're almost developing the known with them, especially like the mental part of it. You're right. And I think it helps for parents to get that, right? Because it's not the kid that's hard usually, right? As bad as this is always so hard to explain for parents, because it's not a knock on the parents. It's just an acknowledgement of it, right? Yeah. You got to understand it.
Yeah.
And it's hard when they explain to most of them.
Yeah, and you're dealing with their history, their either success or failures, and how they handled it.
Yeah,
they're whether it's natural to do that, right? But if they got mad when they didn't perform well, then and little Jimmy doesn't get mad when he doesn't perform well. Well, he's got no drive, but maybe he does. Maybe little Jimmy just shows it differently.
Yeah,
and sometimes trying to find that for each student is a little bit difficult.
That's me.
What's that?
The getting mad. So, at the beginning of my career, I got accolades for pushing through. Yeah. Right. And then it was to get rid of that. It was really, really hard to meet the next level. And I had to do it myself because I didn't have a coach. Right. I mean, like you couldn't, I didn't have anything like that to go and do that with.
Right. Well, I was talking to you earlier, just with some of the things that, I've done, but some of the things I've had some of my junior golfers do, because they are blank slate, and I'm a swing coach and I'm a golf coach. But the whole mental part of it is, I've learned a lot in 30 plus years of playing, but, it's not my specialty to where it's structured and how I approach it and how I know what makes things work for me.
Right.
And over those 30 plus years, through trial and error and a lot of reading and listening and talking, I have a fairly good grasp on it. But I didn't want the kids to be prejudiced towards what my biases were.
Right.
So I sent them to a school here in town at Tapatio, and I sent 3 kids. 2 of them just came back just killing it. In other words, in fact, what was really nice, they were like, "Coach, over 90% of what we learned, you already told us, which was nice.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, the way it was structured, the way it was presented, the fact that he's a specialist in the mental game, it might have just resonated slightly different with them, you know?
Yeah. And it's a different environment. That's the focus. It's not it's like almost pulling it out and separating it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then they were like, oh, so that's why we say, certain things. Yeah. And they're like, to see them click, and at first it was a little hard to say, do I want them to go to somebody else that could possibly, but the reality was
that is hard.
I mean, it wasn't comforting at first because of course you'd like to think that your 30 years of golf experience and 20 years of teaching, you have all the answers or you have most of the answers. But, I took a step back and sorry about that. I took a step back and the idea of teaching kids was to have a blank slate.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather them go and learn from a mental game specialist. And the kids I chose because they're a little bit more mature for their age than maybe the average.
Yeah. Kid. I think there has to be a bit of a maturing because then, you might I don't know, it can be misconstrued with the young ones, right? Because they can take it and start, next thing you know, they're wearing their favorite socks or they're doing all, trying to recreate instead of, understanding the process.
Right. And that's what we've always talked about in one class of mine in particular. It's about the process.
Yeah.
The process of how to improve, the process of how to handle success, the process of how to handle not succeeding.
Boy, that's a big one. Because it's one thing to handle success. It's not that hard.
Really, it's pretty easy, and everybody tells you how good you are too.
I can use it, and I can do all kinds of stuff with it. But it's understanding the loss. That's huge, and I think one of the things that most parents, I guess, because you're just not thinking about it. It's not because the parents are like they're not getting it or whatever, but it's just it's going to benefit them through the rest of their lives if they understand how to deal with loss.
I mean, it happens all the time.
It does.
Like all the time.
It's there. You can't avoid it.
Yeah. I think the more you shelter them from it,
the bigger the fall.
Later in life, which is even worse.
Exactly.
Like the way we look at, not to be morbid, but the way we look at death today is completely different from 100 years ago where, it was just so much more around. Babies didn't, there was more deaths as in infancy. There was more death at a younger age. And so you were always surrounded by it. And
not only that, but you weren't, it was rural America was bigger.
Right.
And that's what I've shared that with some friends over time about, like there was the big freak out at the beginning of the pandemic and everything in it. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't real. I mean, I'm not stupid,
Sure.
on any of that stuff. But the scariest thing that for most was that they had to contemplate death. Mm-hmm. And it was real. Right. Mm-hmm. And it hadn't been anything. I'm like, and when you're not out in rural America where you have like that same year to begin the pandemic, I lost one of my favorite horses. We lost one of our favorite dogs in the house. We also, we have chickens. We have, the crap out here all the time. And death is a real part of the range life farming, right? I mean, it is part of life. Mm-hmm. And when you avoid it, it's catastrophic when you have to consider it all of a sudden, right? And it's the same thing as loss. I mean, if we're not competing, if we're just in the gym and we're just doing things, or we're just on the driving range, mm-hmm. or we're, running a couple of rounds and it's just my score, I haven't lost, right? I haven't gone and played a tournament or played against somebody. And it's like, it's the craziest thing about golf is that, you go out there and we can go hit and go hang out and have a few drinks until somebody goes and puts couple $100 down on the stroke or on a hole. And it's like, boom, everything changes. Like your whole game just went bang, out the window.
Yeah, that definitely happens. There's even within golf, there are guys that are unbelievable at betting. And then when they go to the tournament, it's a different game. And then there are guys that don't bet super well, but when they go to the tournament, everything changes for them. Like, they can't bet, but they can play tournament golf.
Isn't that crazy?
And then there's guys that can't play tournament golf, but they can bet. Can bet and win money. It's amazing. I think it was Tom Weiskopf way back in the day was talking about walking around with a bag full of money that he had won from Jack Nicklaus all summer long. And then Nicklaus would go win the major, the major championship. So he was beating Nicklaus, I believe, in money games all the time.
Isn't that crazy?
But then they'd show up to the tournament and Nicklaus would
just
win the tournament. So which one do you want?
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just two different animals.
Right.
Which is completely different from playing your casual golf.
Yeah.
And I personally am of the mindset that as a coach, maybe to just stay in touch with what some of your students are doing, which is going and being very competitive. I think it's important to put yourself into a field every now and then. Remember what it's like to get a little, A, to prepare for the tournament.
Oh, man.
B, to go, warm up and step on the first tee and have your name called and just...
Oh, that's a different deal, right?
It is a different deal. And I think as a coach and as an instructor, it's important to, every now and then, you don't have to do it all year, but once or twice a year, once every other year, just put yourself out there and remember what it was. And for me, the tournament golf was so fun. I really, in hindsight, I wish I would have looked back. I wish I would have enjoyed it even more.
Really?
Yeah, I loved preparing for tournaments. I loved practicing for tournaments. I loved having the chance of having the limelight on me. I did.
It's cool, isn't it?
It's really cool.
I was talking, so on the podcast before, we've had Brendan O'Reilly.
Okay.
And he's a Jiu Jitsu guy and MMA guy. And he was in Ultimate Fighter Australia house. Mm-hmm. And then he had like about 6 or 7 fights in the UFC. And he teaches MMA up here in Bernie.
Okay.
And he's Aussie, and I like him. He's fun. He'd come out and he'd ride horses with me and stuff. And so he's a cowboy too. And one of the things that he had said is he's in a couple of the big fights, right? And he's just so focused and so, into the mental part of really being able to get in there and compete. And he said, it was just a shame. He said, thinking back, that somebody didn't tell me to enjoy this while I'm here. Like, there's just, man, while you're there, soak that in, man. And I
can understand why. I mean, you want to perform, and to perform, you have to be in a certain mind space.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And I loved preparing for tournaments. I really did.
It's a level of focus that's crazy cool, right?
Yeah. It never seemed like work to me.
Uh-uh.
It was just like, I got a tournament. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I think it's important for coaches to remember what it's like to feel a little nervous over a 3-foot putt. Or, because that's where the process actually pays off, right?
Really pays off.
Right. You trust the process.
That's when it counts.
Yeah,
it's not on the first tee. Right. No, it's that 3-foot putt where everybody's watching and it counts completely. And can you go and have just as much fun doing that stroke as you did the first one?
And when it goes in, can you enjoy it?
Yeah.
And then reset?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't go in, can you accept it and then reset? And then just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. When you look at it, I lost my train of thought here.
It was I watched that movie 7 Days in Utopia.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of deal. Like, I think what most people don't realize, we can see in most movies, it's just a, fanciful, voila, I was there and he just handled it and whatever else. And it's not. It's a practice thing.
Absolutely. And you start with something small.
Yeah.
You start with learning how to handle small things. And, a young student of mine asked me once, well, Coach, how do you know how to handle big things? I said, well, if you handle most of the small things, the big things never really develop. But if they do develop, you handle them the same way you handled the small things. And, I think that really, truly is in golf anyways. If I take care of the things I need to take care of, my grip, my alignment, my posture, my swing plane went way before the tournament, my controlling my trajectories, my distances, then you just got to step up there and allow yourself to do it. Same thing in Jiu Jitsu. Like, if you know that you need a certain grip or 2 certain grips or whatever, once you get those grips, you can do it. But if you try to do the move without the grips, I mean, you're asking for big problems.
Right.
Right. So to me, it's always about controlling the things you can control and letting go of the things that aren't helping you.
Right. No, that's crazy. Cool. There's, I was gonna, I think one of the things that most don't get when they're watching the coaching aspect of things, like you may look at it and you're thinking like you're coddling the kid too much at this time, or you got to toughen him up or whatever else. And understanding that each one handles differently, but that understanding for like most parents, for them to understand that you can't just like give your kid confidence. Right. I mean, like, it's just not just like, voila, he's got confidence, like just tell him he's good and he's good. Right. That confidence really comes from knowledge, and knowledge takes time. Right. Like to know what those fundamentals are. You don't just tell them one time. It's so much of the knowledge comes from experience. Right. And so those kids have to go
experience.
Yeah. And not just one experience, but the experience of right, the experience of wrong, the experience of halfway between, the not using it, and then starting to put it in a combination with how is your head, position is important as you're, using your thighs, and all the different things that you have to, it culminates. Right. And to be able to control all of those, it becomes such a repetition that you can just relax and let it happen. So there's time in that, but then knowing all the things that you're doing, dude, it's such a long road, right?
And like, one of the things you're saying is like, there's an awareness, like you riding the horse out there, you having the awareness of, how your head affects what your hips are doing, and that the horse is feeling the response of your hips because of your head, right? Like, it goes around and around and around. So what's important? Do I control my hips? Do I control my head? And maybe the answer is the head one day, the hips another day, and nothing the next day. They're just doing what they're doing. But the confidence takes time. It takes understanding. It takes
experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think and it takes a little faith. If you ask me, it takes faith to just stick with the process and just know that it may not happen tomorrow, next week, next month, but it will happen if you just stick with the process in almost anything. Working out, day one,
trusting the program,
absolutely,
understanding that there's actually a program. It's just not an instance. It'll go one time and you got it, kind of deal. We just forget. I think as parents, they get to a certain age in life, we kind of just, when we get to our kids and we forget how long it took for you to learn how to do addition and subtraction. Like, that was years. Well, for me, it was even more years. I was slow on that. Yeah. But I mean, you just forget how long it takes to learn all that stuff. When you just, as an adult, you start to take it for granted, some of the stuff that you just know. And it can get really frustrating too. But so I'll give you an experience. I'll give you an example. It was such an eye opener for me, right? My youngest son, George, we got him. We brought him into our home. We didn't adopt yet, but we're fostering to adopt. And he was 5 years old, and he would walk around. He would walk around, and it would drive me crazy because he'd walk on your feet. Like be in the kitchen, and he just, I've been around little kids like just like walk And you're like, they just walk right in front of you, don't even see you. You're like, whoa, hey, buddy. And they didn't even know that you said anything to you. You're like, dang. Like, I'm invisible, right? Well, you walk around, George would walk on your feet. And you walk, and you're like, hey, like, come on, man. Like, you got your own feet, walk on your feet, don't walk on mine, right? And his space was just way off. And like, he's just completely unaware, right? And I was having such a hard time with it. I'm like, at one point I'm just like, stop, get off my feet, man. And he wasn't getting it. Right. And so I talked to this lady who's actually a behavioral therapist type deal with the kids and stuff. And she was like super knowledgeable. Right. And so I'm like, why is my kid doing this? Like, what am I going to do? And she explained that, that he needed to, you got to teach it to him. You got to teach that to him. I'm like, I'm not telling him to stop. She's like, no, you got to teach it to him. And I'm like, so how do I teach it to him? Right. And she says, well, that's something that's learned. And by this time he's like 6 or 7. Right. And she's like, well, that's something that's learned by 3-year-olds when they're 2 and 3 years old, right? It's like your little kid walks around, he steps on your feet, and they're like, oh, excuse me, like, and you teach them like that, and you say, Mr. Camacho, say, excuse me, and you shake his hand, and you do these things. So, you're teaching them to acknowledge the space. You're teaching them to acknowledge these things, right? And it's taught. This was crazy. It was taught in the concept of a 3-year-old, and it's learned in that way. It's not learned another way. And I'm like, well, so you telling me I have to take my 7-year-old and say, excuse me, Mr. Camacho, say, oh, looky here, and she goes, yes. I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I can do that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And she goes, well, have you ever been around somebody who like has spatial issues and they're adults and they stand too close to you when they're talking and you're like, you can move away and they move back into your space. And you're like, and I'm like, yeah, like that irritates the crap out of me when somebody doesn't know that. She goes, well, your son will be that as a 30-year-old if you don't do it. I'm like, oh my God,
you have to do it.
Yeah, I got to do it. Right. But I had to do it in the context of the 3-year-old. Right. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So how long do I have to do that? She goes, it takes a couple of years. Oh my God. So you have the patience to do that with a 2 or 3-year-old, right? How in the world am I going to do this with a 7-year-old? Yeah. I did it. It was not easy, right? But we did it. And now, and so one of the other things she said was just blew my mind about it. So it had to be taught in context, right? And that is a building block for other things. Sure. If you neglect it, he's going to not have other skills because that skill is required to learn the
other skills, which goes back to fundamentals.
Right?
And you learn that at 3.
And exactly, right? And in that context, it had to be taught.
I find it interesting that at first you were telling him, don't stand on my feet. Don't. And then the things that she was saying was like, okay, tell Mr. Camacho, like you're giving them like statements to do versus saying don't.
Right. And that's huge.
Yeah. And so like what I've learned over the years is, really people in general if you look on the internet, the number varies widely, but the majority of our thoughts are in like negative fashion.
Yep.
Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't cross the street. Don't touch the hot stove. Right. And that's for preservation.
Right.
Very simple. So it's very easy when you're competing to slip into don't miss the putt. Don't hit the water. Don't hit it out of bounds. But all of those things actually manifest because you're thinking about.
I always say the brain doesn't hear the word don't.
Right. And so now you're saying out of bounds, water, 3-putt.
Yeah, it's what you're focusing on.
Absolutely. Or in Jiu Jitsu, like don't get arm barred. Don't. And what I've found is if you can focus on what you want. So in Jiu Jitsu, stay tight.
Yep. Elbows close.
Elbows close. Stay safe. Right? Stay safe is a much better thought in the middle of a fight than
Don't screw up.
Don't get hit. Don't get off balance. Don't whatever. Stay safe. Don't feel safe? No, back off. Or something like that.
So when you're teaching the swing on golf,
I try to give statements.
Yeah.
I was something
telling them where to look or what to pay attention to instead of don't pull your head or don't look this way or
don't stop. Yeah. Don't. Yeah. I hardly ever say don't move your head. I say keep your head still, which is it's slightly different.
And it's
slightly
huge.
different. Yeah. It's the same as telling, tell Mr. So-and-so sorry for stepping on his feet and go around him. Yeah. It's very different from saying don't step on somebody's feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of even when you go to the 6 a.m., like I will say, grip here. It's very like directives versus don't let him do this. I say, if he gets this, you do this instead of don't. Because, you stand on the edge of the mat waiting to be called in, or you're waiting on the first tee. And if you're thinking don't, don't be quick versus be smooth.
Yeah.
Two very different.
And it's the attitude you come in with, right?
Absolutely.
If you come in and you step on the first tee and you're like, man, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so excited. And it's such it's a joy, right? Versus, this is so much pressure and do I deserve to be here? Or, I can't handle this.
That's a big one.
Oh,
do I deserve?
That's a tough one.
That's so tough.
Oh, that is a hard one to do. That is really a hard one.
That's a huge one.
That's one that is difficult in every part, especially once you've almost feel like you're a counterfeit that you got there, right? Especially if you're doing okay, and then you're expected to. That's a big mindset.
I think it's a dangerous one to fall victim to.
Mm-hmm.
Do I deserve it? I don't know. Did you work hard? Yes. Did you put in a lot of effort? Yes. Did you do all the requirements to be here? Yes.
Yeah.
Then okay, you deserve it. But what one person says is deserving, the next person could say is not deserving.
Yeah.
Right? And so you might have two athletes that work equally hard. One person believes he deserves it because of all the hard work he just did. The other person saying, man, I don't know if I worked hard enough. And so now the likelihood of him or her achieving it goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
That is really hard. That's a hard place to be at with the kids and
or any athlete.
Yeah, for any athlete, period.
You see it in the gym, like you do see it. You see guys work their tail off, and then they're just a little bit short on whether they feel like they quote unquote deserve it.
Yeah.
And no one says it, but when you hear them talk,
you can hear it.
You can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that is such a huge art in coaching, to be able to acknowledge that, see that, right? To be able to see somebody's, to hear it in their language, right? And to be able to redirect it beforehand, get them on the right way of thinking, and kind of nip that in the bud and try to create, keep that from happening, and get into that. Because it will. I mean, the whole idea is to get to the point where you are successful with it. And then when you get to the point where you are successful with it, and then you almost feel like you're a counterfeit to get in there, or do I deserve to do this or whatever else? That's a hard,
it's a hard one.
And it's a bad one to come back from. I mean, that's a battle.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. And that's why I with these younger kids that I sent to the quote unquote sent to the mental game school.
Yeah.
They have to be a certain level of maturity to be able to go there and get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
But the sooner you give them the better skills to mentally handle the game, they get to build those skills stronger and stronger, so that what I learned by the time I was 32, they got it by 18.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right. And so, it's I forgot who the scientist was, but basically they said they stood on the shoulder of giants.
Yeah.
If they saw further, it's because they stood on the shoulder of the work.
Yeah.
And when I was sitting there, to go back a little bit, when I was sitting there thinking hey, do I want to send them to this? The reality is give them the better skills at a younger age, let them develop the skills, let them do it, and let them try and go further than what I did or what other people have done. Right. So,
yeah. That's a tough. So that's why I think one of the greatest unsung, heroes of most all sports are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, were the coach, right? Even whether there's knowing or unknowing on the coach's behalf, right? Because knowingly or unknowingly from the competitor, you were given that confidence and you were guided in the right direction, by somebody,
And it's normally more than one person, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can push into it, and if the parents aren't supportive and pushing it, and believing and saying it, behind it, like, you got no chance, none whatsoever. If you're all on the same page, I think that's one thing that I like whenever I'm coaching these kids, and the parents are on the same page, right? That they understand as much as I do. Like, man, I want to go out there and kill it. I want your kid to go and hit the national championship. I want all that too. But we kind of will miss the boat if the pinnacle of his life is here.
Absolutely.
Like, man, what if like, how screwed up is that we topped this kid out at 16? Oh no.
I don't know if you remember the show Al Bundy.
Yeah.
With Al Bundy, Married with Children.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's living his best years were scoring 4 touchdowns at Polk High,
Yeah.
Like, that's a sad life, actually.
It really is.
It's a sad life.
It really is. And we've all known a couple of those fellas.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then worse yet, reliving that same with your kids. Like, that's always, I really enjoy that whenever I get the opportunity to pour into a kid and pour into a client for the long haul, right? That we're actually making, that's, it's the same with my kids. It's like, I want them to do well, but the most important thing for me is making a generational change.
Sure.
Right. If I can impact them in a way that impacts the next one and the next one, because I've put them on the right path, and it's even harder. It's one of the things that I teach with the horses, right? It's the cool part. So once I've taught them how to do all the stuff, right, then it's teaching them how to be accountable. Like, it's a whole nother level, right?
That's something completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
And the time that goes into that, but that is a lot of allowing them to make, and that's the hardest part, is allowing them to make the mistakes so they can grow.
So I'm telling you that I wanted them to go see this mental game school and all that. But the reality is you have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, all I'm trying to do, they're going to probably hit the same pitfalls that I hit as a player.
Yeah.
They're probably going to go through the same things, but if they have better skills and better tools to navigate either around them or maybe not go as deep into those pitfalls, then you're helping them.
Right.
And
ooh, that's a hard one to watch. Hard one to watch for the parents, right? Hard one to watch for the coach.
Super tough.
Because, your livelihood depends on them doing well and exceeding. And all it takes is like, a 4 month, having to recover and fix something and whatever else, them to go, so we're going to try a different type of, like, oh, no, like like this has to happen. It really has to happen. If I expect that horse to know that whenever I put it here, it stays there. It has to experience what happens when you don't stay there.
Right.
Right. And that's going to be like a lot of sweat, a lot of work, a lot of whatever else. But it's so true that confidence is built up through the knowledge of adversity. It's not just the knowledge of what to do. It's the experiencing the knowledge of what happens when you don't. And if not, we're always going to be questioning, well, why? Well, but I should try this. Well, good. And the hardest part is, like, for a coach is to go like, no, don't do that. Cause it's going to go and do this, but man, look out, go out there. Let's try that out. We'll figure that out. But you have to have the liberty to do that. That's why it has to be, you're buying into a program.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not necessarily instantaneous.
No.
You're lucky if it is.
Yeah.
And it can happen quickly sometimes.
But there's going to be a fall at some point.
Has to be.
I mean,
because that fall is what helps you pick yourself up and
grow. Yeah.
Right.
Because you're never going to get there without the adversity. Never.
It just doesn't happen.
Mm.
Nobody has wins. Tiger Woods has the best winning percentage in the history of golf, and it's 5-1. So he loses 5 times for every one that he wins, and that's
Crazy.
the best. That's the best ever.
That's so crazy. And we,
yeah, all we do is talk about how much he wins.
Yeah, because that's the only features that they do.
Right.
You know,
of course. Like,
unfortunately, he's probably one of the few that's featured when he loses. But majority of everybody else, we don't pay attention to their losses, right?
I think it was Gatorade had a really good commercial with Michael Jordan talking about, I've missed this many game winners.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he says, I succeed because I've fallen short before or something like that.
Yeah. Like his percentages are like 60%.
Yeah. And it's hard to get a young person who so one of my students shot a career low round in a tournament. And I used to tell them, we want you to win. You want to win. I want you to win. I want nothing but success. But there's going to come a day when you shoot your career low and you don't win. So how do you feel about that? You just shot your best round ever, but you don't win. And it was always just kind of a hypothetical thing to them, because I've experienced that personally. Like, man, I just shot my best round and I didn't win. I wasn't the low round of the day.
Yeah.
Right. But it happened just last week to one of my students. And she ended up tying. Okay. But a lot of high school golf, they do a scorecard playoff. So all that means is that someone randomly picks a hole, and whoever made the better score on that hole wins. And so she shot 64, which is, 7 under par. She's 15, 7 under par. Another 15-year-old girl or 16-year-old girl shot 7 under par, which is to have 2 kids do both on the same day. Yeah. Same tournament. And she lost the playoff. My student lost the playoff. So all of a sudden, the thing that I told her could happen. And how do we handle that? She's like, well, I missed a couple putts. I should have shot 61. I said, okay, I agree. You could have made those putts, but you didn't. How do we handle it? Are we going to walk tall, knowing that you beat your previous score by 5 shots? Or are we going to let the fact that some scorecard playoff said that you didn't win? So how do you want to walk forward? Do you want to walk forward proud and happy and knowing that you did something that you'd never done before? Or do you want to remember that some random score on a hole determined the winner or loser? She's like, I'll be happy. So good. Let's walk forward that way. Because, that if winning is everything and you just killed your best score by 5 shots, now you're not even happy. So what are you practicing for? What are you trying to do?
Why are we here?
Right. There are a lot of people, very good golfers that don't shoot 64.
No. And what does that say for everybody gets a trophy? Like, that's the dumbest thing. I'm like, I'll say it. Like, it's the dumbest damn thing there is that everybody gets a trophy. No. Where's
the incentive to practice a little bit more?
Right. And so it's having a good coach that understands that, we don't always win. And that's where everybody gets crushed. If not, then we're all we're all even? No, we're not. We're not. Then if that's the case, then why are we doing sports?
We're not doing it. No. I don't know if what you do or don't do, but there's a show on Netflix. I think it's Netflix. It's called 14 Peaks. Have you ever heard of it? No. So this, I guess he's Nepalese from Nepal. Yeah. And he climbs, there's 14 mountains in the world that are over 8,000 meters high. Mm-hmm. He climbs all 14 of them in under 7 months. Yeah. Crazy. And some people take away from the fact that he did it because they're like, oh, well, he used oxygen over certain. But it turns out when they test him, his body can do things on less oxygen than what the average person is. Right. So he's not.
Yeah, he's not equal.
He's not equal. Not in that aspect. Right. And it's just a really cool, a student of mine actually turned me on to the show. And when I finally watched it, I was like, man, I should have watched this right when he said it. But it's just really cool. You're up there 8,000 plus meters, which is what, over 20,000 feet easily. And you're like, his body just handles less oxygen better than most people's. Like even elite athletes, his body kills it.
It's the same as Lance Armstrong and his ability on the lungs and stuff. That when they started measuring that later on,
he's like in a different league,
whole different league.
Yeah,
that you just can't like to. But man, that's that whole comparison thing. It's just this dumb. And that's what gets you off into a different deal, comparing yourself to somebody else. And like it's your game. Play your game. Figure your game. I get, but. Beat when I have my kids going to the pin, it's like your job is to try to beat your last score. And that's it. Like if you do that, you're competing against the right person. You're not competing it like against all the others. And if you do incrementally get better each time, you're going to get better. Like you're going to be unstoppable at that point, and it's just a little bit each time, but without failure, there's no reason for success. Without failure, there's no learning. There's no growing. Yeah. It's so provable in life, in every aspect of life. Like to deny it is ignorant.
Yeah.
You can take all the stupid, whatever politics out of whatever. That's just not true.
So, I always use these stories because, like, Ford Motor Company, huge company. Mm. Some people like it, some people don't, whatever. But a lot of people don't know that his first company turned into Oldsmobile, which was turned into a GM product. His second company was later turned into Dodge. Yeah. And then it was his third company, which he had learned from some of his mistakes in the two previous companies. And maybe he did some underhanded things, but it was the third company that became what we think of as Ford Motor Company. But without the mistakes of the first two,
wouldn't have been.
There's no Ford as we think of it now, right? Yeah. So it's just a case of...
And it's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? There was an interview, I can't remember, or they questioned the inventor of the light bulb. Mm-hmm. And they asked him how many times did it take for him to invent the light bulb, and it was like something stupid, like 5,000 whatever attempts before he finally got it right. And they were like, oh, how could you handle being wrong and having failure that many times? He goes, I didn't think it was failing. I just thought there was 5,000 steps to making a light bulb.
It's like perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I told you, I had a golf club in my hand all the time. And, years later, people were like, you didn't see that as hard work? And I was like, no, to me, it was, I felt good when I had a club in my hand all the time. Yeah. I wanted it in my hand. I was always holding it, always gripping it, always doing something with it. But yeah, perspective is, and that's why, with the young lady that shot her low round, like, do we want to walk away from this experience feeling bad about, like, crushing your previous low score just because you didn't get the official? If she goes out and loses the playoff, we'll have a different conversation.
Sure.
But the fact that you just pick a random hole and whoever had the lower score on that hole wins, that's...
and I think something that's really important, it would be a good thing for most parents to understand. Because when I coach, I get to be with them when they're competing, right? And I coach them before, and when they come out of the pin, I coach them outside of the pin, right? So immediately, the first thing that comes out of the pin, the emotion that they feel, that's given to them. Most of them are going to come out and they may, not feel the best about the run or whatever else. But what I build when they come out of that, and what I build into their emotions when they come out of that pin, is the same emotion they're going to take back into the pin the next time. Right? So when they come out of the pin, there's going to be a time for me to fix and work on things that you've done wrong. Right? Mm-hmm. But that's not the time. Mm-hmm. When they come out of the pin, it's to praise the accomplishment of what they did, focus on what you did right, build them up. And because then when they come back in, they're going to come back into that pin with the same emotion that I just brought them to when they came out, right? When we come back to the show pin, the practice pin 2 days later, when you're back at the house, or the next week when we come back to the house, we're going to address all the things that you've really messed up. We're going to work on all this. Not I'm going to neglect all that stuff. But when I come out of that pen, I'm not trying to tell you that, you did a great job just because, I wanted to make you feel better about your losing. Right. I'm trying to give you the emotions. I don't want to take you and crush yourself. You're going to be especially the competitor, right? The one that wants to be the competitor is some of the harshest people on themselves, right? They're the toughest on themselves. They're the most critical of themselves. I don't need to add to it whenever you come out of that pen. I need to go, dude, was that not fun? And they'll come out of there like, I don't even know what happened. I can't even, blacked out in the middle of it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want the freaking adrenaline rush, right? And a horse going fast and you're freaking out and whatever else. And they're like, oh my God, I don't even know what happened. I was like, it was fine. You're fine. Get ready. You're going to do it again tomorrow, right?
Yeah. With the students, I have a closer relationship to, which I try to develop that, but some people are just more forthcoming, more open about it.
Sure.
They'll call me after the tournament round. I always ask them a simple question. First, what did you shoot? Because the sooner you get the number over with, when you start, if you played bad and you don't want to say the number becomes bigger and bigger and bigger in your head. The sooner you just say
it,
what the number is,
where we're at,
we can move forward. Right. And then the second thing I always ask them is, how do you feel about your round? Right. Because a lot of times I can't be there at the tournament with them. And then they'll tell me, I feel bad about this. I feel good about this. And then I always try to steer it towards when I'm immediately talking to them, towards what we did well. Yeah. Kind of like what you're saying. Yeah. And, try to take that perspective. And then when we come back, we'll look at things that maybe didn't go as well and we'll build from there. But I learned that a long time ago. Just say the number. Say the number. Get it over with. Yeah. Most of the time, as soon as people hear it, they turn and walk away. Anyways, it's really the people that really want to know about you and know how you shot that number will sit there and say, well, how'd that happen? Yeah. Tell me about your round. A lot of other times people just want to, did I beat you? Yeah. Really? I mean, yeah. It's true. And so the reality was sometimes
right where I'm at.
Right. And sometimes where, as a junior golfer, or even college golfer, maybe I worked my butt off to shoot a 74. And that 74, I felt really good about. Yeah. Because I had to overcome a lot of adversity. And then you would speak to somebody and they'd be like, oh, on a course like this, you should have shot 68. No, you should never have shot higher than 68. And now you're deflated now and all that. Or I've won tournaments and thought I played horrible.
That's the weirdest.
It's really strange. So that's why I always try to tell the kids, we want to win. You want to win. They want to win. That's why they're putting in work. Right. But it can't be really, truly just about the winning. Because there are days when you underperform in your mind and you come out the B. Yeah. And then there's days when you crush your best score ever.
And that's a bad place to be too, when it's all about just having to get the win. Yeah. Because then I think one of the things that most people that have hit some and gotten some success, right, is that I hear from them over and over is, and the next day, we just got to go do it again. And that's how life is. Yeah. Okay, well, that was, really great. But now if it's all about the win, then 2 days later, we're back on the same track. And now it's just, it's just a grind. Right. It's just, then it's no fun. You're going to take all the fun out of it.
I mean, it's great. I enjoy winning. But if it's everything, to me, it's just what do you really, you're building yourself up to fail.
Oh, definitely.
And to be unhappy.
Multiple areas. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In multiple areas of life. If you can find the joy in the process, the joy in the performing, it gets so much better. It's so much nicer, and when you find the joy in that, then you do get to swing free. You do get to do all those things because you're finding the joy in the process instead of it's the end goal.
Yeah. And that's something I don't know if you ever heard, I think it was Kobe Bryant's retirement speech. Mm. So I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I heard it, and he basically said the dream isn't the championships. The dream is getting up early. The dream is working on your shot, working on your game, working on things to make you better. That's the dream. The dream isn't all the other stuff comes when you follow your dream of waking up.
And this is what I get to do
every day.
Yeah. As I was telling you the other day that I got up and rode a few horses in the morning, rode till about noon, went over and went rope with a buddy of mine for a while. And then I went and did jiu-jitsu in the afternoon. I was like, God dang, how did I do that? Like, I got paid today.
Yeah.
Like, how stupid is that?
Yeah. You know, people say the same thing about me. And until you said it a second ago, or about an hour ago, 2 hours ago, I was thinking, wow, that's pretty nice. And then people say, well, you're at the golf course? I'm like, yeah. I do jiu-jitsu and I go to the golf course.
Cheater.
So, yeah, I mean, that actually brought a little healthy perspective to me when you said that. I was like, oh, okay.
It is.
I get it.
It is. It's good to have every once in a while.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everybody needs a reality check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You really forget just how lucky, just how lucky some of us have gotten to do. And not that, that's the only way to do it. Like there's love for all kinds of stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
I could find that love in, running heavy equipment. Like, dude, that's some cool stuff. Like I get to go around and move big pieces of dirt and, do, and there's a joy in that. And thank goodness we're not all built the same because, that may be an unbelievable, like grind of like never want to do that with some. And,
right.
And then when you get to do that, something that you're finding the fun in, like the hours don't seem like there's not enough hours in the day is how I feel. Like it pisses me off that it's already 5 o'clock or
See, the thing a while back, I was talking to my wife and we were talking and I said, I know I love golf. I know I love jiu-jitsu. I said, but if I had to pick something that I think I really love more than both of those, it's learning and teaching. Like learning and sharing my knowledge.
Yeah.
I love like nothing. Like first thing when I walked into this room is I looked at your books. Because anything that lets me grow my mind.
Yeah.
Like it's a trip to me. I used to spend time if you couldn't find me at campus in college, like a lot of times I'd be in the library just reading a random book. My wife's always like, you got random information in your head. And I love it. But
I got stupid information in my head sometimes.
I do, but you know what? Like it comes out every now and then and it fits. And last night I went to the 6 o'clock class last night and I didn't even leave, I think till 8:20. Because for an hour afterwards, we were just sitting there talking about jiu-jitsu and like, hey, if you do this, if you do that, and just talking and learning from each other. And like to me, it feels so good to like grow mentally, grow physically, grow.
You got to feed the brain, man. I mean, it's such a cool deal. And then when you get to find how you apply that, all the other parts of life into that, or all the parts of that into all the other parts of life, I'm like, that's.
Yeah. When I was watching you ride the horse, right? I'm like, what? His mount control should be just ridiculous. It should be, and maybe it is. Like,
and the part that sucks is I've never gotten to show it to you.
But like everything you're saying, like you're talking about how your head affected your hips. I talk about that in the golf swing. We talk about that in the jiu-jitsu. Like the more you understand it, the more you start to realize, at least in physical motion, how much
sports, period. Like any athleticism, and not even like in the full definition of sports, but like all the correlation between music and what you do and music and what I do. Like it's just, it opens up everything, right?
The best songs or the best times, some of the best rounds of golf I ever played, there would be a portion of a song going through my head.
Looped.
Just a portion.
Yeah.
And when I would practice with a metronome, I would swing best for certain shots, short game shots to a certain beat. And one day I was just curious and I just started like trying to find the beats per minute for these songs it was like 4 or 5 songs that would continually just randomly pop into my head, and I'd always play well. So I started listening to those songs before I would get to the course. Turns out the beats per minute on those portions of the song correlate to what I would always practice to. So my brain found like a song or a rhythm that matched my best practice tempo. And shockingly or unshockingly, I would play well those days because I was swinging to that tempo.
That's crazy.
The whole day.
I sing when I ask a horse to come down to a certain rhythm. Like, so one of the things that we got to be able to do is run really, really fast and then come back to a really slow without, pulling on them and dragging them down. But like, you just relax your body and you slow your beat. And so I lope my small circles to 3 blind mice.
Well, what's funny is like Rodrigo uses the whole bones, like heads. He always sings a song where it's head, hips and toes, hips and toes. Like he's always
really.
Yeah, you've never been there in class when he does that.
No.
He'll sing the song talking about bass, like how to maintain your bass.
Oh, yeah.
And he has this song that he sings in class, and you're just. But like I said, you're three blind mice.
Yeah,
Mine would be songs that I really didn't even like, but they fit the beats would fit what I picked.
I don't know why I picked that one, but that's what worked with
Yeah.
me on it, and that was the rhythm that I had, and it just went.
So there's lots of correlations between that, and I think like what you do when you coach your athletes coming in from a performance where you want to give them the same energy that they want to go out in. I'm trying to do something similar via a phone call or via a text message because I can't always be there. I think if you go to a Jiu Jitsu tournament, when you walk off the mat, hopefully you've had some coaches there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they go up, bump your hand, give you a hug, win or lose.
Right.
And they're trying to give you a positive energy.
Idea of it, so you want to come back and do it again. And I mean, it's all the same stuff, right? I mean, some of it we just don't even know why we're doing it. We're just doing it because that you see the guy, self-defeated, whatever else. He needs it.
He needs it,
right?
And
it's the same with your coaching the kids and stuff. Like, man, you see it. You see they need it. Like, you got to build them up at those places, and give them the reason to come back and find the fun in the doing.
In the process.
And
that we're going to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
And again.
You just want to do it again because that's the fun. That is the joy of it.
One of the guys in the class came up, and he's a white belt. And what I've tried to do in the 6 a.m. classes, show a knee slice pass, show a smash pass, show some passes. And we've just been kind of doing it again and again and again. And then intermittently, like we've worked on like a single leg sweep, single leg egg sweep, a De La Riva sweep. And the other day, we started showing how this sweep will lead to these, like all these 4 sweeps that I just showed you, all lead to the same 4 passes and how they kind of connect. And I guess it was maybe a week ago. Anyways, he came up to me after class. He's like, I was paying attention. You end up there a whole bunch. But you could see the lights. Like you could see something had turned on where he's like, oh, if I get to certain positions and like I'm learning those positions already.
Yeah.
Just got to get there.
You'd love to see the light bulb come on.
It's so fun.
You're like, oh,
yeah, that's why
we're actually going somewhere with this.
Yeah. And it's really fun. And like, Rodrigo was really good at that. I love going over to Heba and Bernie.
Yeah.
And Heba's improved so much as a teacher, if you ask me.
Really?
And mostly language. Like just the way he explains it and the language he uses, to me, he's much more clear, much more concise. And then when you like roll with Tiago, like, I don't know, I was talking to Alex the other day, and like Tiago's getting on another level where it's crazy. It's crazy when you roll with him, and the way he goes about it in class it's a much more free and open kind of ideas.
Yeah, it really
which is a different kind of style of teaching.
Yeah.
But then when you roll with him, you can see how he's like, oh, okay.
It's
like
the same way he's teaching.
The way he's teaching is the way he's rolling, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I think there's value in all of it.
It is. And the way he rolls is what I think was what I'm missing, because he just rolls with whatever you're giving him, he's taking. And that's where that's what Rodrigo keeps hitting me up with, is that, I'm not looking for what's available. I'm trying to force what I'm,
What you want.
Yeah. And it was like, is it so indicative of like how I train horses and how I have plans and everything? It's like, I'm so, bent that kind of rabbit trail I went down, earlier on in my career of, like forcing it down my way kind of deal. That like I gotta work. It's in every place that I'm working at, it's everywhere.
So the way I teach, I like routine. I find comfort in routine, just like I find comfort in like doing the same, like not the exact same routine. I don't want to become a slave, right? But I like routine when I play golf, and I find like when I go to Jiu Jitsu, I park in the same area.
Now I'm going to see where you're parking your spot.
There's one of the guys at this gym where if his area is taken, he just leaves. I will park other places, but he just leaves. And which, to me, now you're becoming a little bit of a slave to the grind. But like routine is, I think if you find athletes, routine is,
it's huge.
It's where you get a lot of confidence from.
Yeah.
Like your routine over and over and over. Because now you're in your comfort zone. Now you can let your body.
You know what to expect a little bit. You can roll a little more free.
It's always the unknown that gives anxiety, right?
Yeah.
To some people, anxiety is caused by not knowing what's going to happen. So if you can give, like you were talking about it earlier, like, how do you count? Well, you got to have something that's known to the young person, right?
Right.
And it's the known that gives you your comfort and your ability to relax.
So the horse is really crazy. They learned from, I just told you a couple of different ways that they learned. One of the things they learned, repetition, is how they really learn, right? Mm-hmm. But when we do patterns and we're doing things that's expected, then they try to, because they learn through repetition, they start reading ahead, right? And so your job is they've got to do it because you told them to do it, not because they think they know, right? So then you start making them wait. And when you start making them wait, it heightens the anxiety. And all of a sudden, then things get really tight and they get really, really big, right? And so the older horses, a lot of times, harder to show most of the time than the young horse, because the young horse has no preconceived notions, right? They just doing what you're telling them. But then after they start to see the repetitive nature of the competition and the showing, because we do the same repetitive things in it, then they start reading ahead. And so we get penalized for them changing leads too early, or them leaning and thinking about that. Anytime a horse goes and deviates off from what you told them, that you have to tell them no. And so when you start telling them no, then you're telling them to wait, and then the anxiety gets even higher and higher. And so the hard part about showing an older horse is, and people worry about them doing it too early and they start holding them and everything else. So the non-pro, I teach them that when they're running around, they're getting ready to do something, and the horse starts to have anxiety about it, tell them what to do. Like, don't tell them don't do it, right?
Tell them what to do.
Yeah, tell them what to do. So if you're going to, you don't have to say do it now, but you just kind of give them a cue that it's going to be small, slow, and then that gives them to relax. And like, they know what to expect, right? Doesn't say do it right now, but I'm going to say get ready and set up. Now just relax. We'll do it whenever you get set and like stab them and go and jerk them here or whatever else. That's going to create higher anxiety, right? But if you can answer the question for them. And so how I explain to most people is like, if we get in the car and I've got the directions and you're driving, right? And we head up to that 4-way intersection up there with the light, and it's green, and we get ready to come up to the intersection. You're going to ask me, which way do we go? I got the directions. If I go, I'll tell you when we get there. You're going to start to worry. It's even worse if I start reach over and step on the gas pedal, and I'll tell you when we get there, right? And I keep it at 60, and you're getting closer and closer to the intersection. The closer we get, and the less that I inform you, the higher the anxiety, right? But if we turn that corner, we head down to that light, and I go, when you get to the light, take a left. We're going to go 5 miles, and we'll take a right. Well, then there's no anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And I can say, when we get there, we are going to do. But it doesn't mean you have to do it right now. But I've already eliminated the guesswork to it. So if I can tell that horse, give him a heads up, here's what we're going to do. And we can sit back and now just whenever I tell you, we'll do it.
We'll do it.
Then I eliminated anxiety, and everything's going to be all right. But it's the way that they learn, right? They learn from the repetition is one of the ways. And we do too, right? We learn from repetition. Absolutely. But it's the not knowing, right?
Right. So there's a really good putter on tour. He's probably a senior tour player now. But statistically, He's been one of the best putters the tour's ever seen. And, he always talks about people always think they have to make the putt. And the second you have to make the putt, when you miss, it creates anxiety. It creates like nervousness. It creates tentativeness. It creates bad things. And he's like, you need to read the green well. You need to have good speed on your putt. You need to have a good start line for where you read it. After that, you're really just giving the ball a chance. So he takes away from the anxiety or the nervousness or the tentativeness by, statistically speaking, once a PGA Tour player gets 8 feet as a whole, as a PGA Tour as a whole, they're at 49%. So they only make 49% of putts from 8 feet.
Wow.
That's it. 49% as a whole. They're obviously better in their
That's crazy though, as a whole, as all the on the tour.
Best 200 golfers in the world, and same on the European tour. It's the same stat, really. From 8 feet, you only make 49%. So if that's the best players on the planet, I think a lot of people put way too much pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And then when you hear him talk about it, he's talking about read the green well, so he can control whether he reads the green or not.
Yeah. Work on the things you can control.
Control the start line, which is done in practice. Control the pace, which is also done in practice. And then just give the ball a chance. And if you give it a chance, if he says, he always says that as long as his ball had a chance, he'll walk away feeling like he did his job. And he's confident that way when he goes to the next hole.
Do the same thing again.
Same thing. As opposed to, I have to make the putt. When the best 200 players on the planet only make 49% from 8 feet. It goes from 100% at 1 feet, 98, 92, I think, and then it drops to like 86. And then it gets, so every foot you move back,
exponentially
it starts dropping big time. Like I'll have people that, I think managing expectations is a huge part of the mental game.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'll have a 12 handicap. I'm thinking of one gentleman in particular. He's a 12 handicap. And if he doesn't hit it to 5 feet from 100 to 120 yards, there's no telling him it's a good shot. If he hit it to 10 feet, no telling him. But the PGA Tour, the leader on the PGA Tour, if I'm not mistaken, hits it anywhere from 12 to 14 feet from that distance. And he hits it the closest on average.
Wow.
So again, if the best person on the PGA Tour hits it to 12 feet on average, like sometimes he's going to hit it closer, sometimes he's going to hit it further. And you're getting upset because you didn't hit it inside 5 feet. Like you're getting upset at something that's not realistic.
Yeah.
So managing your expectations will help your golf game.
Yeah. So you're just setting yourself up to get upset.
Right. Or managing your expectations when you roll.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a white belt and you're getting upset because a purple belt or a brown belt or, if a purple belt and brown belt are rolling with you, that you should actually be
happy that
they wanted to. Yeah. Yeah. Because, there are a lot of times you want to go in there and work on your own stuff. And so managing expectations to me is a huge part of.
That's a tough part for a coach to do with clients. Is manage their expectations, and at the same time, you want them to want to do well, but at the same time, you like managing it to where you're not creating a failure. No matter what you do, that's huge.
You always want to hit it next to the hole,
sure,
right? But you just have to understand that as long as we're working closer,
that's the direction we're working towards.
Yeah, and like I don't know about other sports or whatever, but like there's a lot of analytics in golf now, so you can pull it up. Like, who's leading the tour from 100 yards away, closest, like proximity to the hole. And they'll tell you it's, maybe it's Jordan Spieth at 8 feet. I don't know. But I don't know what it is right now. But you can see that like the average greens hit in regulation for golf, which means on a par 4, you hit the green in 2 shots. On a par 3, you hit it in 1 shot. On a par 5, you hit it in 3 shots, right? So the average on tour is 12 greens per round. That means they mess up. They miss the green 6 times. So that means they have to chip. Yeah, that's that's the average on tour. Like the leader is at, I think, 13.89, so 14 greens per round. The leader
making me feel like I can make the tour.
Well, you know, like if that's the best, now they're playing the biggest courses and all that.
Isn't that crazy though? That you know, we just look at, you know, they're always going to be featuring the top, if you're lucky, top three. You know,
yeah, when you watch
on the
TV,
deal.
you're watching the guys that are playing the best,
Yeah.
which they're going to average more greens. They're going to make more putts. They're
And
going to.
you're looking at what's almost unrealistic whenever you're just talking about making the tour, the top 200 guys. I mean, like it's a lot of it has to do with just the guy that has the tenacity to stay with it and not be defeated because he didn't make the tour the first 3 attempts.
I don't know what the average is now, but the last time I looked it up was a few years ago. And the average age of a PGA Tour rookie was 32 years old.
Holy smokes, really?
So think about
that.
So you hear about, you know, Sergio Garcia, I think was 20 when he was on the tour. You hear about the Tiger Woods
Sure.
at 21. You hear about all these phenoms
Yeah.
that come right out of college and just are special.
Yeah.
But then you don't hear about the guy that was played on the mini tours or played on this or played
Grinded his way out.
and he's
got
34.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the average age has gone down just a little bit. I think it's at 29, 28. But that's still a lot older than what
your perception would be.
Yeah. Normally you think right out of college, come out there and just kill it. But that's
A long road.
those guys that do that are actually really special. Special guys.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nathan, we could probably stay here and talk all day.
It's been fun.
Yeah. That's even cool.
It's been longer than I thought.
It just kind of gets around. I like it. I like that it, you know, there's so much stuff to visit about on that. And it is.
I don't think any of my students would be surprised that we talked.
None of mine would either.
But, you know, it's all good.
Dude, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me on.
I love learning about different sports, period.
Yeah.
You know, just different ways to be able to do things and knowing how people get there. But I love also, you know, being able to educate, you know, other people and parents about the process of competition, success. Success is something that is, you know, individual. It really is, right? And it's something that we build upon in other things. And quick success is so not worth it.
Really,
it's so fleeting, and it comes with a lot of failure afterwards. The slow road to good success builds success in all other areas of life. It really is.
And when you sit back and look at what either you accomplished or what your students have accomplished, like the sense of joy you get from that to me is it's really incredible.
It really is. It really is. I love getting to the point in the age where we're starting to see things that, you know, how they're starting to build upon, and you start to see them. I'm getting to see some of my kids that, you know, came through and how they're being resilient through college and how they're, you know, it's carrying on to other parts of their lives and stuff like that. And they're finding the joy. They're finding joy outside of work and doing some of the still competing with the horses, and they're seeing it, you know, you've seen them grow in their lives. I just think it's cool. I hope more than anything that they get to pass it on, use those same things on their kids, and, you know, make it a generational impact. I like that.
Yeah, because, you know, deep down, at least when it comes to juniors, I can't even say that. Like, I've had adults say that, you know, the things I taught them in golf helped them with passing of a relative, like just picking it up every day. But yeah, if you can help, what a feeling it is to help develop somebody be a better person, right? Like, you know, I know that's what parents do. I'm not a parent, but the fact that I have,
you can borrow help you out.
Yeah, I say I have about 50 kids actually, but the fact that I have, you know, a little bit of a say or an influence on some of the kids, and like I've received some really nice letters from kids saying thank you.
Yeah,
and, you know, in college now, and or just graduating high school, and it's a nice feeling, because sometimes you wonder, am I getting through to them? And for them to respond and you know, say something helped them that we went over and we talked about, and they just reach out and say thank you. It's a nice feeling.
It is. I think, you know, this thing is one of the big reasons why I like doing this podcast, right? Is because there's two things. One, my kids are young right now, and these conversations that we have, like, I'd love for them to be able to sit and listen to it. but they have a hard time sitting still 15 minutes to listen to me talk about anything, right? And so these will be here forever, right? And my son, it goes, I remember that guy, Nathan, at Jiu Jitsu, whatever. Yeah, well, hey, later on, who knows, man, whenever he's 30 years old and he's, struggling in a marriage or whatever, like if he can come back and listen to these things and have, some perspective on life that I could have talked to him about, or that I had the opportunity to talk to him about, that he can comprehend it later on.
Yeah, one of the cool things was, so I lost my father in 2013.
Yeah.
And during COVID, that's actually when I started jiu-jitsu and why I started jiu-jitsu, kind of. But it was a big reason as to why I started. But during COVID, I went upstairs into the attic and found an old camcorder, basically, that I won in a golf tournament, not a college tournament, just a golf tournament. And I thought, hey, I wonder if this thing still works. And I pressed play, and my dad's voice was on it. And I was like in tears. And it was just really cool to hear it. So, like, there was a day when, they're going to be able to come back and listen to you talk and laugh.
I know.
And hear your ideas on life.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing.
Yeah. I had a couple of episodes that I did, and I still have a few more that I want to do, and I will do quite a few, I guess. But on, I call them the Todd Father episodes.
That's cool.
And it's things that I want them to know, right? I did one on marriage, and what does it mean to be married? One of my favorite ones, the first one I did was on truth, in this day and age, there's got to be a foundation for truth.
Yeah, it's twisted.
It is twisted, and it's important for them. And sports hold the truth out, you can watch. And like with your kids and whatever else, who won the tournament or who, like, there's no bullshit on who won the tournament.
Yeah.
We kept score.
Yeah.
Right? And we know who won, and it's there, and that's a part of life, right? And there has to be a foundation of truth. If there's not, then everything's at a whim.
Yeah.
And that's crap. It doesn't play out.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
And
whatever little experiment society thinks it's doing right now it's going to fall on its face.
Yeah.
Like that.
And we all know it too. This is the silliest part about it. But I want them, now like my daughter's 11. She don't listen to anything, but I hope someday they get to listen to them and know what truth is and know where they found their value and those kind of things. Like they're, and right now they don't want to sit down and listen to it.
No, but
it'll be cool later on.
You, like, I ran down the stairs and, listen, look at this. And then we had a golf swing of his on there, and it was just really cool. And this was when I was, I must have been 22 at the time. So he was, and it was just really cool to find that. So to have these podcasts and to hear your ideas and the people you've had on it, that's a really cool thing that you're gifting in the future.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think it's something that, if anything, just to hear, different guys that, you thought, or you just thought, we're just doing things and we were all, wrestling around every, couple of days, but that a lot of these guys are thinkers, man, that, that they make an impact, and all the things that we talk about. And, they think I'm silly for sitting around wanting to hang out after class for but these are the things that we talk about.
Absolutely. And just to bring it back to golf and jiu-jitsu, for me anyways, is like, golf is probably the hardest thing I've ever engaged in as far as like a sport.
Yeah.
As far as from the mental side of it.
Yeah. I can see that.
Things you're trying to control. In baseball, I love sports, but baseball, you can play a certain position and never have the ball hit to you the whole game. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in golf, it's always you. Even in jiu-jitsu, like sometimes the other guy's just going to be better than you, or like they can control you, they can hold you. And so I think it's an incredibly hard sport. And then jiu-jitsu, I would say, teaches you a level of uncomfortableness that is. So in golf, you can still hide from the uncomfortableness. You can make up, it was too windy. The greens didn't, this and that. But, when you have a dude that's smashing you
and you can't breathe,
you're uncomfortable, or a knee on belly or something. And I reflect upon it at times. I'm like, the two things I love doing most are the two hardest things that I do.
Dude, I think that says something about every guy that's willing to embrace difficulties.
Yeah.
It's just a different cut and different type. And not that it's the only one that matters. It's just, it's a different that you got to observe it and go like, there's something different about it. There's a desire to grow and push yourself more. And in that area that, and it's in a thinking way. Like it's so different.
And in jiu-jitsu, it is definitely, people think it's just rolling around or being rough or all that, but, and there's an element of that.
Yeah, there is.
There absolutely is an element. But when you can add the thinking part of it to the roughness, you're a tough guy to handle, right?
Yeah.
So
hard to kill.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me over here.
You bet.
This has a good time.
Thanks, Nathan.
You got it.